Welcome back. You're watching Business Morning on Channels Television, and we're coming to you live from our studios here in Lagos, Nigeria. Of course, I told you that when we come back after the break, we're going to be looking at some key issues developing the policy, the economic policy, and of course, we know that the latest one is the fact that the CBN, or the Monetary Policy Committee of the CBN, for the 17th time, left key rates unchanged, especially the monetary policy rate at 12%. That was for the 17th time. And so to look at the implications for the economy, of course, the average Nigerian and the man on the street, I'll be talking to the Managing Director, Chief Executive Officer, Financial Derivatives Company Limited, Mr. Bismarck Rwani. Good morning, Mr. Rwani.
Good morning, Harriet.
Well, I know you were among the analysts that, we polled, during when we were, putting together the report as regards what the MPC what direction the MPC would take in terms of keeping rates unchanged and the rest of it. And when, they made their decision yesterday, it didn't come as a surprise. But then markets prior to that time had been taking a cautionary stance.
Yes, if you look at what happened, Reuters had 13 economists and they were unanimous in saying that there will be no change. Bloomberg had 15 economists and they were unanimous in saying that there will be no change. However, there's never a 0% probability of any outcome. You never know what will happen. So markets are always tentative in anticipation of reactions of committees. But what is important is that this is a committee, and unanimously all of them voted to keep the stance the same, to keep the rates the same, and to keep the tools the same. There was a 10-to-1 vote in favor of keeping the asymmetric corridor. That is the rate at which they lend to banks and the rate at which they take money from banks. So basically it was status quo. But if you look at it, there are three dimensions you have to put the context into what has happened. The first dimension is what was the immediate concern. The immediate was to keep monetary policy stable and to align monetary policy with monetary conditions. The monetary conditions are easing while the monetary policy actually complemented it. So that was accommodative, period. Second was tactical. What is going to happen between now and September to deal with stability? So the committee, based on the information before them, took a much more cautionary stance and saying that we see, even though things are looking better, we cannot be too optimistic about taking a forward view. So they took a position of caution, right? And that was tactical. But the more strategic issue, which is how to deal with, how to use tools of monetary policy as a way of effectively managing the economy, all of those things were deferred until maybe after the election. So that's the third dimension. But basically, what we got was what we expected. And then let's go back to the considerations. What were the things that concerned the committee? First and foremost, there's creeping 4 consecutive months of increasing inflation. Even though it's still 8.2%, it is within the band of the 6 to 9% range of the central bank.
But it's closer now to the 9%.
Yes, but okay, it's the trend that is important. And also, this is historical inflation. What do you expect to happen in the future? So there are times when central banks and committees, monetary policy committees, take a much more strategic view and anticipate what we call anticipatory monetary policy rather than reactive monetary policy. What you've seen today is neutral monetary policy. They just took a position based on the immediate. The much more strategic things to do may not be wise to do it at this time in view of the fact that we're in an electoral cycle. Okay, so that was it. But inflation, the reserves are being replenished gradually. They're not up, but they're accretion. It's now $40 billion. It came all the way down from 36 to 40.
No, but as of this morning, it's about 38.72 billion.
Yeah, but it went up to 40 in July 18. But you see, what is published is the moving average, the 30-day moving average. What the governor announced yesterday was the exact point of 40 billion, but you have to net out for some other variables. So if you took that, there's a question of replenishment. So the reserves are being replenished gradually. But you don't start celebrating because in the last 4 years, Angola has seen its reserves double, while we've seen our reserves actually crash. So there's a lot of work to do. So based on the Angolan experience, our reserves should actually be at about 80 to $90 billion. But we are at 40, so we shouldn't start celebrating because we are still at the bottom end of the curve.
Now, we've talked about how the markets reacted
Yes.
to, this news and all that, because as much as possible, we want to begin to see funds trickling down to the real sector to ensure that we get ourselves to where we want to be, job creation and stimulating the economy to grow. Now, the action by the Monetary Policy Committee, will it not worsen, high cost of funds in the economy?
I think first and foremost, we must separate what we call monetary policy from fiscal policy. The fiscal policy is supposed to stimulate growth, try to use revenues, taxes, subsidies, and all of that to actually jumpstart growth. The monetary policy is supposed to focus mainly on stability and ensure that even in a growing environment, you don't have an overheated economy. The economic growth is a function of so many variables. Interest rate is just one of those variables, but interest rates are targeted mainly at making sure that inflation is controlled. So, every time the central banks in the world now begin to move towards targeting unemployment, right? There's a mismatch there. Unemployment is a lagging indicator, while central banks deal with leading economic indicators. Lagging indicators are things that happen after the cycle. By the time a man is fired from his job, the company must have had declining sales, lower profitability, probably almost going out of business before they fire people. So retrenchment is a function of something that happens after the major events that destroyed or actually caused a company to go into a downspin takes place. So that's unemployment. What we are trying to do here, what the central banks around the world are doing, is using leading economic indicators ahead of the cycle to stimulate the economy. If it's shrinking, they now stimulate it back into some growth with some monetary stimuluses, but not exactly stimulants, not exactly what you're talking about.
Yeah, but you see, the average man always looks at the fact that they want to be able to access funds to do their businesses, and put money in the pockets, put food on the table. So this stance that the MPC has taken, how does it affect the average man?
The reality is that the impact on the average man is not going to be obvious. It's business as usual. That is what happened yesterday and what happens today. The average man is not going to see any difference. But it could have been worse. If, for example, the committee did something like bringing down interest rates precipitously, right? Then there would have been an outflow of reserves. The currency would have come under pressure, all sorts of things. So first and foremost, you must appreciate the fact that the central bank didn't do anything stupid, right? Now, the central bank, between now and September, will be considering all its options to do smart things, right? Before they start doing what we call modernizing the things they're doing. So like Farid Zakaria says, in the African context, first of all, you must stop doing stupid things, right? Then after you stop doing stupid things, you start to do some smart things. And then before you then modernize those smart things that you're doing. So for now, I don't think the common man should have anything to be concerned about, that things will not deteriorate. And the central bank made it very clear that they understand the monetary policy objectives and that they also differentiated between what is the strategic and what is the tactical. I think that is true.